Yeah. We get lit, we get fly, we talk stuff, we get high. But to the masses, we are a podcast called Verified. I am your host. I am Jopaul. We are back with another edition of the Verified podcast. I know it's been a long time, but we are brought to you by tmtfunding.info. They are the alternative business solutions experts in the game. When you can't go to the bank, when you can't borrow, beg, or steal from your parents or your friends, they are the people to go to when your business is in need. So make sure you check out the website, tmtfunding.info. When they say no, we say yes. Without further ado, we have a very, very special guest with us today. I know it seems like we're doing it twice because I messed up on the recording the first time, but nobody gets to see that except us. So we have the head of foreign relations for Jerusalem. We have the head of tourism for Jerusalem. She is a spectacular individual, an ambassador for Israel, and she is probably somebody that I've wanted to talk to for like the past couple of months and just pick her brain because she really is on the forefront of this terrible disaster that happened on October 7th. Without further ado, Miss Fleur Hassann, how are you? Welcome to the Verified Podcast.
Thank you, Jopaul. Feeling very honored to be on your podcast after a long line of very cool hip hop guests. I'm like, you got a woman politician from Jerusalem? So anyway, thank you for inviting me.
Well, we like to be very inclusive here. And, I mean, you are a spectacular individual. And we at the Verified Podcast, where, we used to only interview artists or, individuals like yourself with the blue check that have, verified. Now we're very, very inclusive of just about anybody that creates, a positive impact for society, as well as doing some tremendous things. So I wanted to get into your story. I wanted to, get into, obviously, the terror attack that we're dealing with. And with your permission, even though I'm not Israeli, I might use the word we when talking about Israel, so I hope that is okay.
Well, first of all, you should, because the Jewish people are one tribe, one family. And if anything has shown us how much we are one, it's the events of 7th of October. And so I don't think anybody has any doubt anymore, though we're all on the same team. And you suffer, we suffer, we suffer, you suffer.
I agree. I say the one thing that, the one good thing, I know if it's weird to say, but the one good thing that Hamas has done has been what Hebrew schools and yeshivas have been trying to do for a lot of years, which is unite all the Jewish people and light a spark into them that really, start learning who you are, your heritage, your upbringing, and the unity that I've seen amongst our Jewish people is phenomenal. And how people are taking initiative and learning what it is that has happened and trying to understand the conflict. And we might as well just jump right into it, off the bat. If there's one thing that you can say to, I guess, the haters or the pro-Palestinians or the anti-Zionists, because they're probably only going to watch the first couple of minutes in this. So if you had a message for them to let them know, like, how great of people the Jewish people are and how inclusive we are and how we don't discriminate or persecute because we know how it's been done to us. So if there was one message that you can say to them in hopes that they would understand where we're coming from, what would it be?
Well, the message that I always try and say is that all we want is peace. And unfortunately, the Palestinian leadership, all they want is the destruction of Israel. How do I know that? Because they've been offered peace many, many times. And these pro-Palestinians, they can't even say that they want a two-state solution. They can't even say that they want a resolution with Israel. They just don't want us here at all. And so to the people who are willing to be a little bit more open-minded, I would say, just look into the history and look to see that Israel has made many, many gestures for peace. In Jerusalem, we have the most diverse city in the country. 40% of Jerusalemites are Arabs. They're my constituents too. They have a good life here. The ones that want to live together with us and want to live in a shared society do. They're successful. And the ones that want to kill us, then of course, that's a complete other story. And for the people who don't believe that Jews should be living in their ancestral homeland, all I have to say to you is bigger people have tried to get rid of us before. And we will win, we will get stronger, and then we will invent a new Jewish festival where we stuff our faces for 3 days.
I love it. Absolutely love it. We definitely need another Jewish holiday of positivity, even though it's usually off the backs of, some catastrophe, and, if you know the history, I mean, it's probably been about like 27 uprisings, throughout the course of the past 3,500 years, with minor skirmishes in between, all of those where, and diasporas and executions.
Just in Jerusalem, we've had about 20 of them. The Jewish people, King David created Jerusalem. It was a backwater town, and King David said, I'm going to put the capital of the Jewish kingdom. The Jewish kingdom comprised of many tribes. And King David was a very smart politician, like Game of Thrones, right? And he said, okay, if I'm going to unite all the tribes,
Valamagulis.
yes, if I'm going to unite the tribes, we need one uniting city. And his city was Hebron, right? Which today is in Judea. People would say it's the West Bank. We call it
And shout out to Yishai Fleischer.
I love him and his wife. And basically, King David was the king of Judea. And Hebron is the capital of Judea. But King David was smart. And he said, if I'm going to consolidate the Jewish people around one identity, we need one city where everybody can gather and everybody could feel that this is their capital city. And that was the birth of Jerusalem 3,000 years ago. Since then, we've been kicked out, killed, brought back, kicked out, killed about 20 times. And we're back. And
we're back, baby.
We're back, baby, and we're not going anywhere. And I think the bottom line is this. The bottom line is this. Nobody is going anywhere. And the minute that everybody accepts that, especially the Palestinian leadership, that's the beginning of peace. We're not going anywhere. I tell people this all the time. We're not going to go into the sea, as they tell their children. And I tell Jews all the time too. And they're not going to go in buses to Jordan. And they're not going to go to Egypt. We're all here.
And we're staying.
There's only one way forward. And that is shared society, to live together, to understand boundaries, to understand how we could become the best country in the Middle East and in the world. We have all of the ingredients. But the Palestinian leadership has to stop lying to their people and say to them, we're not going to kick out the Jews. Let's just find a way to live with them. That's all it takes. The next day we'll have peace.
Now, okay, well, I mean, it sounds simple in a nutshell. How do you now, and I don't expect like a clear answer. Now, this is the question that, I've asked, many, scholars and historians and people that are very, very, versed on the history as well as the conflict. How do you de-radicalize over 20 years of indoctrination that UNRWA has basically poisoned the Palestinian society? And I relate it to, like an owner of a pit bull that trains the pit bull to be like a vicious, killer, and the dog gets off the leash, goes and it bites another dog or another person. What happens to the owner? The owner, gets in trouble. And more times than not, the dog gets put down if they cannot be saved or rehabilitated. So what do we do when we have 2 million pit bulls that have owners that have indoctrinated them to just go and bite Jews all the time? Well, not all of them. I mean, plausible deniability. Okay, not everyone.
No, I know, but I wish it was just 2 million. It's way more than that, let me tell you. First of all, it's in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, where there's another, I think almost 1.5 million people, if not more. We've got the 2 million people in Gaza, and then you've got the entire Arab world. And let me tell you what I mean. Egypt has had peace with Israel for 40 years. Do you think they changed their school curriculum? Do you think they changed their media? Incitement and hatred, same in Jordan. So even the countries that made peace with us continue to incite and blame all their problems on the Jews. The typical Jewish scapegoat that the Nazis used to get the people around the idea of Hitler exterminating the Jews. They pumped them up in years and years saying, all of your problems, if you can't pay your mortgage, it's because of the Jews. If our society is collapsing, if our economy is collapsing, if we can't get you to finish the month in terms of your pay and your salary, that's all the fault of the Jews. This is what Egypt and Jordan have been pumping into them. So let's leave them for a second. Let's talk about what's going on here. How do you denazify the Palestinian people from years of indoctrination? And again, it's not just them. Al Jazeera is doing a wonderful job in indoctrinating not just the Middle East, but the entire world.
Yeah, I call Al Jazeera the right arm of the Muslim Brotherhood.
They're the worst. They're the worst. Iran, Muslim Brotherhood, that's their mouthpiece, and people believe them. That's the worst thing. And so after the Second World War, they had to essentially also denazify Germany. There were lots of Germans who still believed in the Nazi ideology. You start with education and media. So the education is you come to a new Palestinian school book. Take as an example the school book that we have for Arab Israelis in Israel. Arab Israelis comprise 20% of our country. We're not teaching them to be Zionists. We are simply talking about peace and a peaceful coexistence. That's all. They get their heritage. They speak Arabic first language, Hebrew second language. That's the curriculum. Forget us. Bring in the UAE. The UAE changed their curriculum a number of years ago to get rid of incitement against Jews and Israel. Take the UAE to build a curriculum. Saudi Arabia took out the hatred and the anti-Semitism in their curriculum 3 years ago. Take the Arab moderate countries that have made peace with Israel and get them to make the curriculum. I don't have to be the person doing the curriculum, but stop teaching children that the best thing they could do with their lives is kill themselves, martyr themselves for the cause. Stop teaching children that one day, all the Jews are going to the sea. And so just hang on in there. Even if we get a two-state solution, this is what they're taught. Even if we get a two-state solution, it's a step towards kicking the Jews out. How could we have peace when little kindergarten kids are doing simulations about killing Jews?
I was literally about to say the same thing. I was watching a documentary, an expose, and it's like, while when we're kids, we put on, little plays, we're dressed as like princes and fairies and trees, and it's very happy. And they're dressed up as militants, in Hamas, full weaponry gear, holding bazookas, kidnapping Israelis, and the entire audience is cheering. So I can't understand
Jopaul, it's no less than child abuse, because
Agree.
a child is born innocent, and then you could either fill it up with positivity and positive affirmations, or you can
Or
fill it
hate.
up with shit, okay, and poison, and that's what they're doing.
So we have to figure out how to depoison, the
Yes.
people that have been poisoned for, for quite some years. But the one thing that I really don't understand, it's like, it's a weird double standard. It's like, you hear now, I know this is not the ideology of all Palestinians, so I don't want to generalize, all of them. I'm sure there are great Palestinians that, that hate Hamas. Haven't seen too many of them, but I know that they're out there. So
Yeah.
when you see these videos of these women, of whether they encourage, other women to birth, more male babies to push them towards martyrdom, but then when it comes to Israel defending itself and retaliating, suddenly it's like, oh, all the women and children, mostly, I mean, it's up to 130,000, and 129,000 are all women and children. Israel only killed 3 combatants. Like, you know what? Let's take what happened in Jerusalem. Let's take
The
what happened
numbers
in
are
Jerusalem.
off. The numbers are off. The numbers
Of
are
course.
invented.
Oh,
The numbers are completely
because the
fabricated.
Gaza Ministry of Defense, they could be trusted.
Exactly. It's like saying the Nazi propaganda machine. It's the numbers are off. And
Right.
what we know is this: we have killed 13,000 combatants. So even according to their warped numbers, that ratio does not exist in modern warfare. It
Exactly.
doesn't exist.
I've done some research on this. The
It doesn't
international,
exist. But their numbers are completely warped. And if everybody wants to save these people, and believe me, I'm a mother of 4 children, and the last thing I want to see is any other family or any other children or any other mothers suffering. It's the last thing I want to see. Why isn't anybody pressurizing Egypt to take in the women and the children temporarily until the end
ship
of
the
the war?
blockade just for a couple of days.
Just for a couple of months, we'll sign a paper and then bring them back. Do you know what they're doing? They built not
They
one
built
wall,
it higher.
they built 3 walls, one after the other. It's like the Berlin, and nobody puts any pressure on Egypt, which is the border country with Gaza. Nobody. Their brethren, nothing. The whole of Europe took in, not just Ukrainians, but Syrians. The Arab countries didn't take one Syrian in. Nobody asks for anything from these countries except the people who were attacked, the victims in the story. We somehow have to end up being the ones taking care of our own enemies. What the world's turned upside down.
Yeah, I mean, while we talk about, how, the border of Gaza, is, with Egypt, as well as Israel. Do you think Sadat would have been, open to opening the borders? Like, I mean, I know that he was, very keen on getting back to Sinai and restoring the faith in his people, but he seemed like he was actually willing to play ball. Do you think if there was like a modern day Sadat?
Look, Sadat was very important. I'll tell you why. Because Sadat was the first piece of the domino. Without Sadat being brave enough to say, I will make peace with Israel. Now, for putting the UAE and Saudi aside, we've never had a territorial conflict with UAE. We've never had war against them, and they've never lost people in a war against us. And we've lost people in a war against them, of course. With Egypt, it was a bloody 3 bloody wars before we had peace, where they lost people and we lost people. That man was a brave man to say, this is time for peace now. Okay, we've had enough. These people are not going anywhere. We're not going to destroy them. So let's have peace. That was a pragmatist. And that was somebody who believed in peace. That was a brave leader. Unfortunately, he was murdered, not just for that, for many different reasons. And we haven't had that type of, then Jordan, of course. Without Sadat, Jordan would never have made peace. Without Egypt, Jordan would never made peace with Israel. And so Sadat was a very important piece of the puzzle. The problem with Egypt has been that they've never really wanted the Sinai. It's a headache for them. They don't see these people as Egyptians. It's a headache for them. The problem is that nobody wants Gaza. Nobody wants Gaza. Nobody wants to help Gaza. Now, if Egypt was a country that understood its place in this conflict, remember, the tunnels with all the weaponry came from Egypt, not from the Egyptians, from Muslim Brotherhood sources coming from Egypt. They didn't stop it. They didn't protect that border to help us. And so shouldn't they pay any price at all for the fact that all the weaponry that we're seeing right now came from their sovereign land? I find it incredible that nobody, and also Egypt, people don't know this, is on the verge of economic collapse. Who's saving Egypt right now? The International Monetary Fund and the Americans. All they have to do is say, we're closing the tap, let them in, we'll bring them back after 2 months. We'll give you guarantees that we'll bring them back.
Right. And that right there, that guarantee that you would bring them back, it's like that destroys their argument of that's ethnic cleansing. That's a genocide. And it's like I can't stand these people that get on
at worst, it's displacement of a people during a war. Guess who else has been displaced?
The Jews.
250 million Israelis have been displaced. We're dealing with our own crisis.
I try to tell people that, during the Nakba or the Great Catastrophe, when there was 750,000 displaced Palestinians, they were not forced to, they were not expelled, they were not exiled. And the wording of a lot of these documentaries that are out there is very, very misleading because it makes it seem like the Israelis, the IDF came in there, or, the Haganah or the militias, with guns and said, all right, all Palestinians get out of your houses and we're moving in. So I feel like it's
well, first of all, a lot of the displaced people, war is ugly, but a lot of the displaced people were told by the Arab world leadership, leave, we're going to beat these guys and you're going to come back. And many left because they were told to leave. The smart ones stayed and said, okay, we'll be part of the state of Israel. That's 20% of the Arabs who actually live as full citizens in Israel. But let me tell you something else that gets overlooked. In the Arab world, there were Jews. And guess who else got displaced during 1948? 1 million Jews.
Yeah, I think it was from 1948 to 73, it was 800,000 Jews.
Iraqi, Syrian, Lebanese, Jordan, Egypt, you name it. And how many refugees, how many Palestinian refugees are there today from 1948?
For some reason, they got inherited, there was refugee inheritance status, all of their children. None of those people are the original, 1948 from the partition that they never agreed to in the first place.
750,000 refugees in 48. Today there's 5 million. How do you have that?
Oh yeah,
and we're committing a genocide. So I don't know how they multiply. Now, how many of the million refugees from Arab lands are refugees today?
I'd say probably only the ones that live in that claim to live in Gaza. 0. Okay.
0. You know why? Because we move on. We move forward. We don't try to reverse history. We go like this.
And
we brush ourselves off. We pick ourselves back and we move forward. We're not victims. We don't make ourselves out to be victims, and we don't make a business out of victimization.
I wonder why people think that because we've been persecuted, and I say we've been Hellenized, we've been Islamicized, we've been Romanized, we've been vilified, and everybody else ostracized us. Why do people think that we would want to do that onto other people? I see people saying that Israel gets enjoyment of putting their foots on the Palestinian people's backs and keeping them down, and in an attempt to ethnically cleanse them so they can take over all of Gaza. Meanwhile, they removed everyone from Gaza in 2005, and then there's the argument of, oh well, they control the airspace and the ports, and the movement. But they handed the keys over to the Palestinians and said, "Good luck, guys." Like, and
well, it's very
what
obvious
happened?
they can't self-govern because they just could go into chaos and fundamentalism. But I think it's even more nefarious than that, Jopaul. I think that they invent these lies in order to wash their own consciences about the Holocaust. I think that once you can blame the Jews for being the modern Nazis, then you don't have to feel bad about 6 million who were killed in Europe, in a civilized country, and nobody did anything to help them.
In the most heinous of ways, and how they compare, the living conditions in Gaza to the concentration camps of Auschwitz, where a lot of my family members were murdered. It's such a disgrace.
There were country clubs in Gaza. Gaza didn't lack for anything. How do we know that? How do you build 700 kilometers of tunnels when you lack for things? It's like bigger than the New York subway. How do you build that?
Oh, and let's talk about those tunnels. So I have if you've seen any of my stories, I have a very, very deep, rooted passion for history. Yeah. And if you look at the way that, archaeology or preservation of, like they say that if you dig anywhere in Israel long enough, you're going to find some sort of ancient Jewish artifact. So I wonder how.
You don't have to live in Israel. You dig Jerusalem. You dig a little bit, you'll find a bone or a coin.
Anyway. Which is amazing. So I wonder how much biblical history of the ancient Palestinians, ancient Judeans and Sumerians and Israelites and the Canaanites was destroyed by building of those tunnels instead of the preservation of all of that history. I can only imagine, like, the Ark of the Covenant was probably destroyed.
It gets worse than that, Jopaul. Here on Temple Mount, who's in charge of the administration of Temple Mount? It's the Waqf, which is a Jordanian authority. It's like a Jordanian religious authority. And, as you know, we have archaeology and excavations all around the old city, because that's really the richness of the history. And who's telling us to stop digging? Who's stopping the digging? The Jordanian Waqf. Why? Because the more we dig,
Solomon's temple is right underneath.
The more we dig, the more we find that we were here times before for 3,000 years. That's what they don't want you to know. It's like the Palestinians embody, cancel culture. Not talk about it, because that's what it is.
Why is it that people consider Israel an apartheid state, but meanwhile in Jerusalem, and I was watching an interview that you did that on Fridays, you provide, buses for Muslims to come in and pray, but Jews are not allowed to. So why is that? So how do they have the balls to say that it's an apartheid state, but
if we're going to start with the lies, if we're going to go into the lies and the whole story that they've invented, we'll be here all day. But essentially, we sanctify, we facilitate, we believe in freedom of worship, right? And during the 48 to 67 rule of Jordan on East Jerusalem, including the holy site, there was no freedom of worship for Jews and Christians. So it was just the Muslims. So the only guarantee of religious freedoms in the city of Jerusalem is Jewish sovereignty. That's first. Secondly, what we do is, because we don't want to incite the Muslim world and we don't want them accusing us of things, we stop Jews from praying in Temple Mount. They're not allowed. You can get arrested if you go out to Temple Mount as a Jew and you put on tefillin, you pull out your book and you start praying, the Israeli police will arrest you. Why? So that we don't bother the sensitivities of the Muslims. Now, what happens during Ramadan? The biggest lie of all, the Hamas people curate a confrontation. How do they do that? They go the night before to prayers. Then they lock themselves into the mosque. They take explosives and they take rocks. They start throwing it down to the Wailing Wall. When the Israeli police come to move them out, they spread a lie that the Israelis are storming Temple Mount, and they're storming Temple Mount, and we're going to take over Temple Mount, or we're kicking out the Muslims. And that's how we end up with what we end up in, a war curated by Hamas, justified to the Muslim world because the Jews are storming Temple Mount. Has happened for the last 5 years.
That's very, very interesting. Abraham, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Of course, thank you.
Yeah, we were talking about how Jews are not allowed to to pray at the Temple Mount because they'll get arrested.
It's called supremacy in the United States, right? Not white supremacy, but Islamic supremacy, unfortunately.
There we go. There we go. Well, thank you for joining us, Abraham. I figured, bring in, my Syrian Jew counterpart, so this way, he could tell, some good
Are you
tales.
kidding me? I have Fleur over here, Hassan-Nahoum. Wow, it's Syrian, Lebanese. I don't know. Where are you from?
Actually, I'm Spanish Moroccan, but I know there's a lot of Hassans, Jewish Hassans, who are Syrian, and apparently I've got a little bit of a following in the Syrian community. So we're all in. We're all in.
That's it.
I appreciate you joining us. So what I wanted to get to next is basically, why is it that, why can't we all just get along? No, how is it that we're going to be able to actually move forward in some sort of direction that actually makes sense? Now, I know that the things that we hear from America and American politicians, and I don't really want to get too much into politics because it's just a whole nother animal altogether. But it seems like there is a large portion of the political community that keeps on saying ceasefire, but yet they don't know that Hamas has rejected a ceasefire every single time. Why is it that the public relations or the marketing of our side, even though I know our numbers, are, we're 1.2, billion Muslims versus, 15 million Jews. It's, the numbers are very, very, not to scale. So how do we increase our likability again? Like, because people have started to hate us. And so I feel like the only way that we're going to move forward is by people remembering how great a people the Jewish people are, and that we don't really want for much, and we just try to get along, and we don't bother nobody.
Well, yeah. Well, unfortunately, nobody really believes that anymore. I think it's a number of things. First of all, you can't underestimate the point in history that we're in. And I don't think we have to zoom out a little bit and look at Jewish history. And for 3,000 years, we have been, as you mentioned right at the beginning of the podcast, persecuted. My family were kicked out of Spain during the Inquisition. For
1492 diaspora?
Yeah, 1492. And that's where my family come from, southern Spain, Andalusia, where ironically we lived in peace with the Muslims, but not with the Christians who then kicked us out. And then we have many, hundreds of years of pogroms in Russia leading up to the Holocaust. And what we are living through right now, and I really want to make this very clear so that young people can understand, and this is really why history is important for people to understand, we are living through another wave in the world of anti-Semitism. Now, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, who was really, I think, one of the best Jewish philosophers in our era, who passed away, unfortunately, during COVID, said that anti-Semitism is a mutating virus. And in every generation, it takes a new shape. And so when my family were kicked out of Spain, we were Christ killers. It was religious. It was religious discrimination. And then throughout the pogroms in Russia, Eastern Europe, leading up to the Holocaust, it was ethnic. Jews were of lower ethnic value. And today, we are looking at an anti-Semitism which is about the collective Jew, the nation state Jew. We are all of a sudden colonizers, even though we are the most impressive decolonization project of the last 100 years. We decolonized our country. We suffered. We are the victim of imperialism and colonization of the Babylonians and the Romans and the Ottomans, you name it. We somehow became the colonizer in a post-colonial world where colonization is bad. Why? Not because we really are the colonizers. We also weren't really the Christ killers, and we also weren't really an ethnic, nefarious race. It's because in every generation where they come for us, the anti-Semitism takes a new shape. It's a mutating virus. It takes the shape that works for that era. And today, in this crazy woke world, when white, white privilege is the ultimate sin, we all of a sudden have white privilege. Now, first of all, we're not white. Secondly,
Abraham looks very, very white. you know.
Look at me, Hassan. They don't know what to do with me. And look at Abraham, for God's sake. And even you, Jopaul.
My passport says Syria on it. Good luck at the airport.
Jopaul, you look like you could also be from the Arab world. And anyways, the point is this, that every time there's a new way of scapegoating the Jews, and every new type of anti-Semitism evolves into what works for that day. But let's not forget, this is anti-Semitism. It's anti-Semitism by singling out the only democracy in the Middle East. It's anti-Semitism by the fact that they are over-obsessed with Israel. Did you know there's 8 million people suffering through a famine in Sudan right now, and nobody gives a shit? Nobody cares. It's not about human rights, and it's not about people, and it's not about people dying. 500,000 Syrians were killed. Many of them were chemically gassed by Assad. And guess what? There were no marches. Yeah. And so it's very clear to me that I just never thought it would happen in our generation. And I also thought that because we had Israel, at least we had that protection. Now, the difference between all those different eras and now is that we're sovereign in our land. We have an army. We have capabilities. We have allies. We are only 15 million people, but we have a lot of allies. We have the evangelical world. We have so many great allies. We have even the moderate Arab countries that quietly understand what we're dealing with. But let's not be mistaken for a second. We are all, our generation, are living through an Inquisition type experience. And even in that Inquisition type experience, there were Jews that took part in it on the side of the persecutors. The main persecutor of the Inquisition was a guy called Torquemada. And Torquemada was a Jew. He was like the capos.
He was one of the conservative Jews, the conservative, but, you know,
he
but
converted.
Yeah.
Like I said on my podcast this week, you know, about that idiot in the Oscars. I said, being Jewish is like the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And I think a lot of people haven't realized yet. And Torquemada was one of them. The capos are one of them. You can never leave because we're not a religion. We're also a religion. We're also an ethnicity. We're also a people, a culture. We are a family. We're a tribe.
We're a gang, blood in, blood out, babe. No, I'm sorry. No.
You gotta leave your family. Try and leave your family, especially a Sephardi family. See what they do to you.
And if you tried to do that in other religions, you know, you can be.
I just moved 30 miles and I almost got beheaded.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Abraham. So what's been your experience? I mean, because I mean, I know you live in New York also, but it's a very different experience. Now, were you born here or you were born overseas?
I was born in Damascus.
Whoa.
So I came with the last wave of Jews in '94, because prior to '92, we weren't allowed to leave the country. We were political hostages, for lack of a better word. And, you know, subjected to a bunch of restrictions. Like my mother, who always wanted to be like a journalist, right? She could never actually be a journalist because Jews can't really be journalists.
And she was a woman. I'm sure that didn't help either.
No, it did not help. You know, my aunt, though, was the first Jewish lawyer. So I was very proud of her in Syria.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is Assad, actually. What a lot of people don't know is that before Assad, it was much, much worse. So during my dad's era, in the 70s, he couldn't leave his house. He couldn't go more than 10 kilometers without getting a special visa as a Jew. When Assad came in, he's an Alawi, which is a minority Muslim. He's not a Shia, he's not a Sunni. And so his whole platform was he was going to give rights to the minorities that were living within Syria. Now,
he needed them, didn't he? He needed them to stay in power.
Yep. He needed our support. There were many propaganda, marches, and videos, and all that stuff. Now, he lifted a few restrictions, right? Like the 10-mile rule. We still weren't allowed to leave the country, but now we can drive to Bludan, to the mountain, or to Ladiyeh for the summer, whatever. But it was still horrific. But we all kind of understood, you know, a Jew, I'm going to stand with Israel, I understand who I am. No matter what, we took risks, we learned. But we came here, and I think the biggest problem here is major, major ignorance. people have moved away from understanding what it means to be Jewish in the first place. And I'm not talking about Shabbat or, Tefillah or any of that. I'm just talking about what it actually means to be a member of the Jewish nation, right? And this ignorance is making it very easy for them to be shamed into silence. What's happening is the pro-Palestinian side played on the American and the global race wars that are going, like Fleur was saying, right? We're white now, right? The definition of a Jew is a white guy, European colonizer, because they need us to be that. Once they have us defined as this white person, then we are going on the bottom of the equity ladder. Remember, it's now about equity, not equality.
The victimhood ladder, which has become a premium to be a victim. Who's the big victim?
And we hate that. I mean, the Syrians, when I started speaking out, they're like, what are you talking about? It's fine. We're in America. It's over. I'm like, I know.
We move on. We move on. Otherwise, you'd be a refugee, Abraham. Why aren't you a refugee?
Oh, I put out, you know what? If they want to call me a refugee, they literally could. I'm serious.
But you don't call yourself a refugee. That's the difference.
My children will never, ever feel that they're less than anybody else. They're full Americans, but they know what it is to be Jewish. And so we've gotten put on this ladder of like white. And the problem is the organization. And let me say something. There's no difference between Ashkenazis or Sephardic or Mizrahi. We're all one. But sometimes you need a hammer and sometimes you need a screwdriver. You're not discriminating against the tools. You're just using the tool for the job. And so what I think would be immensely helpful, honestly, and I've been saying this for years, is that the faces of these organizations that are leading the fights against anti-Semitism become more dark for us Jews, like more Mizrahi Jews leading them. The reason is because we don't need to convince the anti-Semites that Ashkenazis are indigenous. Who cares? We know that they're indigenous to the region just like we are. That's not the fight that's on hand. And we're getting so distracted in trying to prove that Ashkenazi Jews are indigenous to the region that we're missing the point. The point is anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and it's going to lead to catastrophic decisions. So if you put more Mizrahi voices, more Sephardic voices, like what you're doing is you're making a hole, a large sized hole in the fabric of lies that the pro-Palestinian side has weaved. Your existence completely shatters the idea of a white Jew.
They don't know what I am. They're very confused about me. And they keep calling me a British settler colonizer. Yeah, Hassan is a real colonizing name.
My last name was Abu Hamra.
When you look at your Wikipedia,
what was your last name?
Abu Hamra. I had to take off the Abu because I was stopped at every airport.
Yeah, because you won't be able to fly anywhere.
How about this? My last name is Lerner, and there's a story behind that. Basically, the Jews of Poland, there was a town, or this is what I heard, that in the Germanic Poland region, it was during the time that Poland disappeared from the map for like a year. There was a town called the town of Lern, and when the people immigrated from the Poland, Germanic area to Ellis Island, the people that were, basically writing down, people's names, they were like, oh, another person from the town of Lern, another learner. And that's why there are so many different learners that are out there.
Let me tell you, the Polish Jews came from Spain as well, many of them.
Yep.
And Spain came from the exile for the Roman Empire. So we're all from here. Ultimately,
right. I mean,
or like my sister likes to say, or like my sister liked to say, we're all from the same bus from Egypt when we were exiled, when we ran away.
I agree. The first thing that Abraham asked me is like, "Where's your family from?" I was like, "Which diaspora are we talking about?" Yeah. Because we traveled a lot.
Which exile?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it could have been part of like when the Babylonians came, and when Cyrus, from Persia allowed them to, go back to Israel. Some of them stayed, some of them went north, some of them went south, some of them went back to build the temple. I mean, unfortunately, they killed all of us, during a lot of these things. So all of our records really are not there. Thank God for 23andMe. So you could kind of
By the way, can I just tell you another another lie that gets spread, that in Israel, you can't do a DNA test. Somehow insinuating that we don't want to show I did a DNA test, and I'm like 25% Middle Eastern and another like 30% Spanish Moroccan, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Anyway, I'm 5% Ashkenazi Jew. So I've got this Palestinian friend called Mahmoud, and he comes to me one day. He said, Fleur, very excited. He said, I did my DNA test. I said, how did it go? He says, I'm 10% Ashkenazi. I said, Mahmoud, you're more Ashkenazi than me.
I mean,
Wow.
and I could give you the whole reasoning behind that. You know, so in the third and fourth century, when the Romans came to basically turn Judea, you know, into Syria, Palestine, those people that lived there were Judeans. I guarantee you, if you test the blood of 90% of the Palestinians, they're going to have Ashkenazic or Semitic blood.
That's what they don't say.
Question.
You know, in fact, actually, you mentioned something. The DNA is very similar to ours because we're all from here. Very
Yeah.
similar.
It's all the same
I've gone
regions.
a DNA challenge test. It was really, really funny because somebody started arguing with me. You know, you're not the real Israelites. You guys go back to Europe. I'm like, you know, I don't. You obviously don't know who you're talking to. I've never been to Europe, right?
Exactly. I'm from Syria, mate. I'm from Damascus.
You know, and then he's like, well, before Syria, you definitely came from Europe. I'm like, well, unfortunately for you, no, my great-great-grandparents were from Syria. Like, I don't know.
Where did they come from? How did they get to Syria also? From here.
So they said, you know what? If you do a DNA test, I guarantee you, you're gonna find that more than 60 or 70% of your DNA is completely European. I said, wow, okay, interesting. So I went and I did the 24andMe, it's called.
Yeah.
I am, so to my surprise, I am 40% Baghdadi, which makes a lot of sense.
Baghdadi. Yeah.
But basically, 85%, I think 85 or 88% of my DNA traces back to the Middle East, whether it's Baghdad or the Levant. I'm also 3% Ashkenazi, by the way.
3. Oh, I beat you to it.
You beat me.
Now I got to do a DNA. I think my brother actually did one, so I have to. I have a twin brother, so we have the same exact, you know, DNA. So
of course, that's easy for you. You save money. You're such a Jew.
Exactly. Listen, I try. You know what? And I used to.
Bother?
So let's talk about that real quickly. So I used to joke around like that too, where you know, playing off of the stereotype about how, you know, oh, you know, yeah, I'm saving money, so I'm a good Jew. But meanwhile, these were the little fabrications and lies that were told, you know, circa 1939 Germany, where like the Jews stick to themselves. They, you know, they won't lend you money. They'll only stick to their own kind. They're the reason for, you know, the collapse of Germany. They're cheap. They know how to save money and they're stingy. So it's like, I feel like if we keep playing off of that stereotype, even though we're Jews and we're allowed to do it, I feel like we're doing kind of the same thing that basically got us locked up into the Holocaust. But we didn't cause it. But it's like, I don't know if it's right if we continue it. I think we could try to put an end to it, but it sure was funny though. But yeah, I'm a great Jew.
But on the other hand, I think the most special thing about the Jewish people is that we know how to laugh at ourselves. And this is something that the fundamentalists, the Islamists, the woke, nobody has a sense of humor. And the best humor, you know, everybody tells me the best American humor is Jewish humor. And that's what it is. I mean, you see it everywhere and it's embedded in the culture in New York. I love the fact that even through the darkest of times, we can still find a way or a moment to laugh. And I think that's what actually, it's one of the reasons why we've survived for so long.
I think if we don't laugh, we'll cry about it, because if you think about it too long, it's like, this is fucking terrible. It's like, but yeah, I agree with you. I've seen a lot of comedians, like there was one Jewish comedian, you know, just got up there on the mic, was just like, so they hate us again. and the entire crowd, you know, just went, you know, absolutely ballistic. But I mean, I just hope the world can kind of get a grasp on what they're doing, and it's going to be a day of reckoning and an awakening for a lot of people when they realize that they were on the completely wrong side of history, and they are.
Hope that happens. I think I dream about that. I said one day these idiots. I dream about that. I say one day these idiots are going to wake up and say we were on the wrong side of history, and I think it's going to take a while to get there. But I do think you're right. I think we will get there.
What do you think that we can do? Like so. Me and Abraham are on the American front, you know, and standing tall and, you know, representing for our Jewish people. What could we do more or different that would help aid in what you guys are doing in Israel?
Well, I think what you do is already amazing. The fact that you're standing for truth, that you're using your platform, your connections, your credibility that you've built up over the years to defend your people, I think that's extremely valuable because we've got three wars going on. We've got the war here, the military war in the south and the north, and God help us. We've got the war of words, which you guys are on the front lines of. And then we've got the war of the Jews, the anti-Semitism that is going on. It's more than the words. It's what's going on campuses. It's what's going on in different communities. Jews are being attacked. And so you guys are two out of the three wars that the Jews are fighting today. You guys are right there. So I think that protecting your communities and telling the truth, that's what we need.
Can I ask a question? Because I debate this issue a lot.
Can I have a moment? Just a moment.
Please.
Sorry, somebody's calling me nonstop. I want to make sure nobody's died. Hello?
Please.
Rega, ani sholachat mishu. Sorry, I've got somebody. I'm just going to send my husband to go collect something.
No problem.
I mean, listen, got deputy, mayor of Jerusalem. She got business. She got to take care of it. But again, we could talk amongst ourselves, and we'll just bring her up to speed. What was the question?
No, I honestly, what I was really curious about is from their perspective, right? How do they want the advocacy to be? I see. No problem. So it was really what I was talking about when I was asking him. Is we see different strategies of advocacy.
Yeah.
And I think now this is a hard way to go, but I think this is the problem. I don't think you're seeing a lot of people on the pro-Palestinian side that actually believe with the pro-Palestinian side. You have a very weak generation that's willing to ascend and capitulate to avoid conflict and to avoid to take the path of least resistance, which is human nature.
Well, they don't know anything. I mean, let's start with that. This is trending. It's trending. And a couple of idiot celebrities think that they're cool for standing with a social justice cause. They know nothing about it. It's not even social justice. I think that's part of the problem, is that nobody knows anything. And again, the woke, toxic culture, Jews are white colonialists. Yeah, let's go against the Jews. I think all of that is true. And I do think we have a weak generation. I call it the hashtag generation, because it's just about the quick fix. But I have to say something about Israel. We have not taken this seriously enough. I think that after October 7th, Israelis, I'm not talking about government and people who should have known better, but Israelis never really understood the value of public diplomacy and the war of words. They didn't know. Israelis who were born here don't know what anti-Semitism is because they've never experienced it. They've lived in a country where you're majority Jewish. My children are born here. I wasn't. I know what anti-Semitism is. And they kind of understand it because I tell them, but they don't really get it. And I think after October 7th, after seeing what happened around the world, also a lot of Israelis live outside of Israel, they are in shock. They don't know what's happening. They've never seen this. They've experienced wars, but they've never seen this side of the war against Jews. And I'm hoping that this will lead to the government of Israel really developing a proper strategy, because they've never had one. They've really never had one.
No, I agree. I think a strategy is most needed, and a strategy of truth. I think the strategy of trying to appease the other side by continuing some lies, just so you don't sound offensive, does more damage than not speaking out at all, right? The people who are like, listen, I believe that today we should have a two-state solution, for instance, right? Like right now, this moment, not a reality. And by you stating
also,
that,
don't they know? Also, they don't know that we tried. They don't know anything. They don't know anything.
We've tried so many times.
5 times, but they don't know that. Nobody tells.
Right. So my point is, I don't think we have to defend that position. I think we need to change to becoming more offensive in our arguments, more powerful in our defense of Israel, more of a hardline stance instead of one that's developed by not trying to offend anybody, because that's where we're going to get destroyed.
I agree, which leads me to the other thing, is that a lot of Jews want to be loved, validate us. I don't stand strong, know who you are, and then you won't need to be validated by anybody.
Yep.
You know what I think it is? I think because the opinion or the perception of Jews, which is fucking crazy, is that we are pushy and we're already doing that. Meanwhile, we're just trying to get along, and we already know going into a situation how much we might not be liked by the other people, so we go above and beyond to try to fit in and make them like us, where in all reality, right now, we have to take a hard stance and be like this, like, no, what we're talking about is right. We're not going to justify anything and say, oh, I can understand what you're talking about, but, or what about this and what about that? I think we need to be very, very concise and have a lot of synergy as far as what the overall messaging is. I feel like there's a lot of different people that are fucking it up. And it's these charlatan Jews that I can't stand the most, like the Norman Finkelsteins and the Jonathan Glazers and like just the worst
People
Jews
that were
that are out there.
carting Jews into the gas chambers. These are the capos. We have them in every generation. We have them today. And in the end, these people, what they don't understand is that to the other side, to the haters, there will always be Jews. They're just the useful fools right now, but you will always be a Jew. You know, and I've met many Holocaust survivors in my time, and many of them said to me, you know, I never felt Jewish, but Hitler made a Jew out of me. And that's how I'm feeling this post-October 7th. A lot of these Jews that thought, oh, we'll just be with the Palestinians and they'll love us more. And oh, it's... You know, all those, many of those are still staying, but they're very fringe. Many of those are like, you know what? Now you come after my people. Now I understand what you want. That's it. So
That's
I think you have to be
that's a great way to put it.
Confident and proud, stand tall. We're an incredible people. We have an incredible history. They've tried to kill us so many times, and yet here we are. And not just that, every time they try and kill us, we come back bigger and we come back stronger. We have not just created a country, we have created technology that is fixing big, major world problems. And that is who we are. We have nothing to be ashamed of. We have to stand tall, move forward, and build bigger and better. Because every time you kill us, we're going to come back bigger and better.
I love
100%.
it. If you had to, and so I'm part of this I'm That Jew campaign, which is done by...
Oh, I love that. They did one of me.
Oh, good. Abraham, did they do one of you yet?
Yes.
No.
Abraham, come on. You're that Syrian Jew. Let's get it done.
Okay, so if you had to describe yourself with the first word is I'm that, and then the last word is Jew, fill in, which basically describes, you as
unapologetic Syrian Jew.
I'm that unapologetic Syrian Jew. Etan, if you hear me, Abraham is next. We got to I'm that Jew him immediately. Let's see. So what else did I want to cover? There was a couple of other things, but I want to
finish, guys. I need to finish in like 3 minutes.
3 minutes, no problem. Okay, so I guess the last thing that I'll say is, if you could give one statement to the Jewish people around the world, what would it be?
I think I just said it. Be proud.
Okay.
Be strong. You are part of an incredible chain of generations. We are like the walking dinosaurs. We shouldn't even be here. The ancient Romans were destroyed. The ancient Greeks were destroyed. These were people with massive empires. And yet us Jews are still here by the fact that we had an incredible blueprint called the Torah, and by the fact that we persevered. And everywhere we went, we didn't just take care of ourselves, we took care of the societies that we were in. We're productive members of every society. We don't try to change anything. We try to make things better. And so what I would say to Jews is stand proud, stand tall. We have so much to be proud of. Be that proud Jew because we deserve it. And again, we will come out bigger. We will come out stronger because we always do.
100%. Well, next time I'm in Jerusalem, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to have to meet up.
Oh, of course. I've got, okay, take my email, take my number, and when you come to Jerusalem, where do you live now?
New York.
Which part?
Well, now in Great Neck, originally from Brooklyn.
Yo, Great Neck is the Syrian Persians.
No, Brooklyn is the Syrian town. I'm in the Galut of Brooklyn right now.
Oh, you're in Brooklyn. Well, my best friend married a Persian Jew and lives in Great Neck.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. And yeah. Oh, it's Persian town. Great Neck is Persian town.
I'm coming to New York on the 14th of April, just a week before Pesach. I'm coming to do a couple of events, and
I'd love to meet up.
Maybe we'll go out for a drink.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm all about drinking. Let's go. L'chaim to life.
L'chaim, guys. Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
Jopaul, just tag me, whatever, and then I'll share it.
Absolutely. I'll probably need you to like give me like a video drop like this. Like, hey, what up? It's Fleur Hassann, Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, and I'm rocking out with Jopaul on the Verified podcast. You can send that to me.
You want to do it now?
Yeah, do it. And you know what?
All right, guys, I'm gonna hop off. Thank you so much for including me.
Nice to meet
See
you.
you.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. You know you can do, Fleur, if once we get off, just with your phone, just make a quick little video, send it to me.
Oh, a video, and I'll send it to you. Okay, send me your number. I don't think I have your number. Send me your number.
Oh, I definitely will. Okay, ready? It's one. No, I'm not going to give it over the air.
No. Just send me your number on IG or on email.
I definitely will. Okay, so we have been the Verified Podcast. This is Jopaul with Fleur Hassann. We are signing out. We are brought to you by tmtfunding.info. When they say no, we say yes. Verified Podcast, signing out. Love y'all. Shalom.